Palisades. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can, yes.
I moved. I just had an interruption. I moved, or my family and I moved to the Palisades in '53, and I went to Palisades Elementary. Woody Duke was the first. It was my neighbor and my friend. And then I went to Emerson for the first semester while Paul Revere was being built. And we used to take the bus. And then I went to Paul Revere, and then I met people from Brentwood, and then of course I went to uni. I have a question. I don't know if there's nobody else on the call now that went to Paul Revere, but when others join us, I have a question if we have time for it.
I know that Ginny Johnston went to Paul Revere, and I hope she'll join.
So whenever, I don't know, how many do you expect today?
One never knows. No expectations.
I'm surprised that Dan Hayton and Joel are not here, and Kent.
Well, maybe they'll pop in. I think Joel couldn't do it because it's the start of a Jewish holiday.
Oh, okay, because he just got back from Israel.
Oh, wow. Let me see what holiday it might. I don't know what, maybe it's just the Sabbath. I don't mean just, but anyway. So then what happened after you left uni?
Well, before we move on, I would like to ask, how's Joni doing?
Not well.
Okay.
Dementia.
I don't know if you can say hello for me, or whoever speaks to her, or whether she would respond.
So far,
but after uni, I went to Santa Monica College. I ended up joining the California National Guard in '64. I was in the 1965 Watts riot. That was my first summer camp.
Wow.
I was in heavy artillery for 6-year obligation. And then my company that I was with, Rexall Drug and Chemical, I was there 17 years. They moved me to St. Louis. And I was there 3.5 years in systems and programming. And I got out of the Guard in '70. And I got married in '72. And we have Olivia's my wife, and we have 4 children. And we have 2 sets of grandchildren.
Nice.
They live in Westlake Village, and we've been in Prescott about 5 years.
What made you decide to move to Arizona?
Well, California is not a good state for retirees. Many people I spoke to wanted to move to North Carolina, of all places, and then it's an anti-business state, in my opinion. I was vice president for Diamondback Bicycles in Camarillo for 10 years. So for us, it was time to move on. So we're very happy here. It really the downtown area reminds me of the Palisades in many ways, quaint. So the places I worked was Rexall Drug and Chemical for 17. And then I worked for Carnation International for 2 years. And so I did a lot of international travel there at 35 country responsibility. And then after that, we were acquired by Nestle Foods, which is a Swiss company. And then I went to work for Diamondback Bicycles for 10 years in Camarillo, importing bicycles from Japan, Taiwan, and mainland China. After that, I started my own internet business, bilingual portal, Spanish and English. And I had to shut it down after 3.5 years. I was my own angel investor. And it was just too tough. I didn't have enough working capital. Then we moved to Las Vegas, built a house, and then ended up back in Thousand Oaks. And then from there, we moved to Prescott.
So from all that business experience, if you were going to give advice to one of your grandkids who wanted to start a business now, what advice would you give them?
I think it starts with finding a good mentor. If you have a person that you gravitate to that's both successful and will take you under their wing, give you the advice, 20, 30 years your senior, not a relative, but just a mentor, somebody that you come in contact with. It can give you a nice, it could give you somebody that you can follow, that has the ethics and a good moral character. And I think if you're lucky and to locate somebody like that, it can be very helpful to you.
And what did you find in terms of like mentoring women so they could get past the glass ceiling? Was that complicated because of fear of sexual harassment kind of business?
Well, I don't know about the sexual harassment, but I did have in my responsibility as a director, I had women work for me, and the thing they told me, this is in the 80s, is they could never work for a woman, and women hold women back much more than men ever hold women back.
In terms of what ways? That's interesting.
They think other women are rivals, and they're catty, and they say negative things about other women that achieve. So they did not find women to be supportive of women. They said it's much better to work for a man who just wants to get the job done. It's much easier for them to relate to the leadership of a male, and they were not anxious to work for women.
Bill, what have you found in terms of advancing women in terms of your work experience and observation?
The industry that I was in was pretty much male dominated. I did have several women that worked for me, and because their advancement was based upon merit and productivity and the ability to get along with others and take care of clients. Other than that, it wasn't in the day where you had to promote women or any other category of people just because of their category. And some women did extremely well, and others, I think, at least in the environment I was in, it was based upon merit. Some did well, and others were preoccupied and very happy with the position they were in.
What was that in real estate? Is that the field that is your?
Yeah, real estate and more in the investment management at a very high institutional level. More of a Wall Street type of environment.
But that was on the East Coast, on the West Coast here.
Well, I spent 12 years in New York commuting, but yeah, no, I did it on both the West Coast and East Coast and internationally.
What did you find about what are the characteristics that get someone advancing towards the top, male or female or whatever they are?
Well, in the there's several categories of specialty in the area that we had. Asset management, marketing were the primary two that most women gravitated towards. And with the marketing, that's where I found most women in that particular industry working. And this is outside of residential real estate, which is totally different from what I was involved in, you find women probably dominate that industry much more than other real estate categories. So it was all merit-based. I never found any discrimination against women. And I guess in the early, about 20 years ago, we had been donating to a group that promoted minorities for graduate education in business. And they kept asking for more money. And I said, well, why don't you identify some minorities that we can hire? Because we keep donating, but we never see anybody. And so we were able to bring some minorities on. But there again, it was not based upon their race or gender. It was really based upon their ability to perform.
What I'm hearing from academics mainly is that the way that you need to advance, like up the tenure ladder system, you have to have allies. You can't work alone. You have to do what Todd says, have a mentor. You have to, work with a union. You have to have people that support you. You can't do it by yourself. I mean, there's power games that go on. So I wondered if you found that, or maybe academia is especially power gaming.
My impression is academia is far more power gaming than most other industries. Yes. No, I think, at least in the industry I was in, if you were productive and you could, if you're marketing and you could raise a lot of capital, or if you're in asset management and you did a great job of managing assets, you were promoted. It was not gender or otherwise based.
So there weren't like coalitions and cliques and, people who, well, I read an interesting book a long time ago, Chimpanzee Politics by France de Waal. And the chimps, the alpha males, they don't get there by themselves. They have allies. They do favors for this chimp, so this chimp will support them. They posture. They have all kinds of strategies. It's not just whether you're strong or clever or whatever. So are you saying that you didn't see those kind of games, power plays underneath the surface kind of stuff?
I didn't see so many power plays, but I think what Todd was mentioning beyond mentorship is the friends that you make in your own particular office or company can be very helpful as far as being advanced, so that people get to know you not only on a business level, but on a personal level, because you like to do business with people that you enjoy. And so I think you have to reach out and create friendships. And I'm sure there's a lot of cases where you could say there are power plays. I mean, you see that in politics all the time. That's a pure power play industry.
But you're really saying that merit is the main thing in terms of the business world that you see.
That was my experience. Yes.
That's very interesting. There's some quote from a senior diplomat that no one gets so heated over small details or struggles as academia, something like that. I'll have to look for that quote because I'm interested. Okay, Sandra, hi, tell us what you've been doing. Thanks, Bill.
I haven't been doing much of anything. I was sort of recovering from an illness, and now I'm better, and so I've got energy and feeling good and just living life. That's all I can tell you.
Okay. I found this. How's your husband doing?
He's not doing real well at all. So
I'm not sure.
Siri, please be quiet.
Okay, I changed it.
I don't know how she hears me. I didn't even talk to her. Yes, my husband is struggling, to say the least. So it's a day by day type of thing, and we do the best we can, and he does the best he can. And the neurologists think that he has something called progressive supranuclear palsy. It looks like Parkinson's, but it isn't Parkinson's. So we're dealing with that. And I've got 3 wonderful children that are nearby, so that's a blessing. And I still work for Loyola Marymount. I have student teachers. Would you believe that? We're going to be 80 years old and they still hire me to go out to schools. I could be these young people's grandma. In fact, yes, that's what I could be. And I'm still going out to schools, and it's a lovely connection to my profession as being a teacher.
Yeah, well, I've had grandmas are great, grandpas are great. We need them. So that's a blessing. What I'm hearing from teachers, from faculty, is that kids are feral. They're wild. They're unsocialized because they've been at home because of COVID. Are you seeing that too?
Yes, I think that that's very true. They lost 2 years. And when you have little children, I'm talking about the little ones, the kinder, the first graders, that didn't learn to sit on the rug to focus on a teacher reading a book. They didn't learn those very important social skills and learning skills. And so they are a bit behind. And feral's a good way to put it. They have like this wild excitement in them, and they're harder to control. But I think they are starting to come back because they've been in the classroom now, you know.
Well, I mean, I hear the same thing from faculty. It's really hard to motivate students. They don't turn in their assignments. The teachers, I talked to a biology professor at Chico State. She's, I'll extend your deadline. I'll help you. I'll do this, but it's like pulling teeth to get them to be responsible about doing their work. They just, something shut down while they were at home.
I agree with even like what you're saying at the college level. Even working with these students that I work with, where I'm extending, because I have certain expectations for these students to get their plans into me, 24 hours before so I could review them. Even setting up a Zoom meeting for them. There's always a reason, and they're always apologizing to me. Oh, I'm sorry.
The dog ate them.
I couldn't quite get it because there's always a reason. And I have one grandson that's at San Diego State, and he's in his last semester of mechanical engineering. And they do a big final year's project. And he says to me, Granny, I don't understand why my peers can't get their things in when we have a schedule and we're running around trying to get things done. And maybe that is the new norm. I don't know. But
Sandra,
yes.
are you at Loyola in West Los Angeles?
Yeah, West Los Angeles.
And you're overseeing student teachers?
Student teachers. So
is Judy Welch there also?
I don't know what is she doing there?
I think she was doing the same thing. She was a grade behind us.
Oh, well, she very well can be. I'll look for her name at our next Zoom meeting. Writing it down. I remember.
Her maiden name was Judy Hirsch, and I think her married name, last name is Welch, W-E-L-C-H. I think she's.
I think her family had the market in Brentwood.
They had the Westward Home Markets. That's correct.
It's interesting. You should mention the Westward Ho. Was that over on? It was on San Vicente, right?
Yes.
I'm picturing it now. I think it's a Whole Foods.
Whole Foods, right? Yeah.
I'm looking at picturing it. That's right. Because I was thinking. Yes.
Excuse me, her husband, Tom Welch, he passed away, but Tom was her husband.
Right. Yeah, he passed away a couple of years ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about San Vicente. They had that San Vicente Market near was it near Bundy and San Vicente?
Yes.
And I remember when my kids were born, my mother had a cleaners on San Vicente, and on Christmas, she would always go to the San Vicente market to buy deli food. And that became our tradition that because we had a delicatessen on National where I lived called Kay's Deli. And she would go over to the deli and she'd buy all this food for Christmas Eve. And we must have bought it till she passed away. We always went to Vicente Foods to buy the deli. Now we go to Factors.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Do you find it getting any better, or it's not improving with both the college students and the little kids?
Well, you know what, the college students, I wonder, they talk about the millennials.
Well, they're Z now.
Okay, well, whatever they are, this is now where they're being assigned to schools, and they don't want to drive more than 4 miles.
In LA? I don't think so.
So part of the responsibility now of the people in charge, I call them my bosses, is to make sure that these students get to a school where they don't have to drive too far. And I just found that fascinating to me, that they get a choice. And they're more making the rules. Now, maybe this next group will be more responsible. I don't know.
Interesting. We'll let you off the hook for a minute. John, let's put you on the hook. What's going on with you? You have any new paintings to show us?
No, I'm being sued, but that's taking up most of my life right now emotionally. But I won't go into that.
You have a good lawyer then, and we'll leave it at that.
I hope he's a good lawyer. Yeah, I do.
Oh.
Actually, I would like to ask Todd. I mean, I haven't seen you for a long time. Well, since uni.
Yes.
Have you heard anything about Bill Mergner?
Not at all.
Not at
Nothing.
all. Okay. Yeah, he
I
left.
was
He left uni very early, and I never saw him.
no,
I don't
I haven't
know.
heard that name in years. I was the one that told Gail about John Strong. John Strong,
Is he? I remember him. Was he ill?
he passed early or just before Christmas. And
Okay.
I mentioned her because I will use the example. He was absolutely normal 2 months ago. And one day I got a call, and it was a voicemail that says, "This is John Strong. I'm in the hospital, and I don't know who I'm calling."
Wow.
And I listened to that, and I called him back and went to voicemail. And then I called him the next day, and his mailbox was full. So I had a difficult time finding somebody to see how he was doing. And I got to his wife, and she said, he's in the hospital and he's going downhill so quickly, it's hard for people to believe. And they don't know what's wrong. So I made an appointment to drive from Prescott, Arizona, and stop at his hospital room in Sylmar. And I was on my way to visit our 4 kids in Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village. And I called, and they said, how about 2:00 on Friday? And I said, that's fine. I said, how long can I stay? They said 30 minutes. So the day before I left, his wife texted me and said, don't bother going to the hospital since he passed away at 8 this morning. And the thing that just stunned me was how you could be in one condition 2 months ago and And then whatever, I don't know any details of what it was that was a
Mhm.
problem for him, but he seemed to go downhill so quickly. It was frightening just to experience that. So anyway, I passed that on to Gail as she let Dave Kuhn know. And so I would just say that nobody's asked me this question, but I'm getting sad about the fact I'm losing boyhood friends, not even
Oh,
high
yeah.
school friends, but my boyhood friends that I played little league with, and I'm getting reports of them with health problems, which is seems understandable, but it just seems like I'm getting touched by many of my old friends, and it's sad. It's sad.
Yes, did you know Fred Marks very well? Or
Not very
did
well, but I
he died in late November, and we had stayed friends for a long time. I mean, we just always stayed friends, and I guess one of the biggest experiences I've had recently was that I started talking to him, like every few days he called me, and I mean, he was really ill. He had a stroke a year later. He had a heart attack and developed a liver failure, kidney failure, and lung cancer. And we were talking on the phone, and that was a big one for me. Was also I was less nervous about talking to someone that was dying as a result of we just became very honest about the experience that he was going through. And I've gone through that same thing of very close friends from high school just since 2019, of losing a lot of friends from high school or from art school. And it seems very strange because I kept these friends for so long, even though we lived in
John
different parts.
Todd, let me
John
interrupt you. I have
Yes.
Ginny on email. She can't get into Zoom for
Oh.
some reason. And you said you had a question for someone who went to Paul Revere, which she did.
Oh, well, did Todd, you
Mr.
were going to
Todd.
talk? Todd was
What's-
going to tell us.
Todd, what's the question?
The question for Jenny is, does she remember how we voted for the name of the school? And does she remember how it ended up being Paul Revere by one vote over Robert E. Lee?
Oh, really?
I want to know if there's any way anybody can think of to confirm that.
Okay, I'm typing it to her right now.
A sign of the times, kind of. Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I think, well, I just wanted to mention that to you about
Well,
because I went through, I've been going through that experience, and I think I've said it, before you. It's sort of like I have to redefine the world, or I was feeling that. I mean, a world without Chris Cabot, a world without David Rich, and it's been a very big change. I gather you and John Strong were friends and stayed friends.
I knew him my whole life from Little League and at Palisades playground. But then, of course, at Paul Revere, he lived in Brentwood. He was an art teacher, by the way. You said you were in art. John had an art studio. So,
Okay.
but I knew him my whole life. I would go hunting in Bakersfield area with him in the early 60s. Just in my case, it was somebody I stayed in touch with, and we would chat on the phone, and we would talk about happy times. Let me put it that way. Our memories were always we were not doom and gloom. We were always would make each other laugh. Remembering
Oh
this,
boy, that was a big
oh,
one. That was a big one. Me too.
oh, see, you too, huh?
Oh God, yes.
Yeah.
It gets harder and harder to laugh. There's nothing I love more than hysterical laughter, especially places where I wasn't supposed to do it.
Can you give us an
We were-
example of one of the most egregious hysterical fits of laughter?
Well, like assemblies were very good, of course, at uni assemblies.
And you did
And,
that?
and in classes, of course. And people could make me laugh. David Rich could make me laugh a lot. And Chris Cabot and I love to laugh. Behaving disgracefully in the furniture departments of like Bullock's, like, what? Yeah, I'm just, it's harder to laugh. I think, to find people that you have that humorous rapport with as time goes on.
It's interesting that you had the freedom to do that because girls wouldn't, because boys can be boys and girls are supposed to be very good. So I don't think girls would have disrupted assemblies like that. Do you?
I don't know. I don't know if boys did as much as we did. I remember in Emerson Junior High School, before any assembly, Kenneth Kilday made Dave Rich and Bob Kroll and myself report to him. Instead of going to the assemblies, we'd have to go pick up papers on the boys' field. So I think I know I was acting out a lot on just my general dysfunctional being and everything like that.
Because it made you laugh.
Yes. Oh God, yes.
Todd, Ginny doesn't remember. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just wanted to try it on anybody that was there when, because we went to Westchester the first semester, B7, and then from A7 on, we finished at what turned out to be Paul Revere. Anyway, thanks for asking her.
Well,
Hey,
I
John.
do remember that B7 class that was there. Todd, I do remember you at Emerson in the B7.
John
Oh,
has
you
an incredible
do?
memory.
Yeah, I do. I have this memory.
Hey, John,
So do I.
question for John. As you are losing close friends, do you try and replace those friendships, or are we at a place in life where it's difficult to replace friendships like that? Or do you even find the need to replace those friendships?
Well, I think I've always picked up friends at different points, like I did at art school too, and some of them have been dying now. And then, when I was in New York and I was living, I taught at this one school in the Greenwich Village, and well, I guess I've got one person I could consider a very close friend from that period, and I'm living upstate, and I guess I have a very good friend, and there, and people that like to laugh or that I can make laugh, and I guess that's one of the things that goes with it, but I'm losing friends from like art school, that is the people that I met in the mid-60s, and where I was teaching, I remember being one of the really young people, and I mean, people stayed teaching at this art school where I was up until they're into their 90s, and they're gone, and now I'm becoming one of the older people. I teach on Zoom now since the COVID started, and I don't know. I think about art students. I don't really know. It's hard for me to talk about generations, because it's sort of like there's this thing called an art student, and they just always seem kind of the same way. They're still idealistic, when they're younger. And teaching at night, I meet people that are going back to school after they've raised children or retired. And so I've never quite understood about the generations very much. Though,
Can I test
I
your
guess-
memory? A beast question.
I'm
John
sorry.
knows everybody. If you have a question,
Could
John.
I?
Yes.
My question, my B7 question. Do you remember Mrs. Cottle,
No.
English teacher?
At
Okay.
At,
Do you remember
uni?
Emerson? No, at Emerson.
No, I don't. I think she must have either left or I never.
Okay.
sorry, Todd.
But that's okay. The second question, do you remember how they offered us in the B7 an opportunity to go to the Mormon tabernacle, the Mormon temple, and be given entry into a very private room that was going to be closed off to the public? We were going to have an opportunity. Do you remember that invitation?
It's something kind of familiar because I lived in that area, right, surrounding the Mormon temple. So where Emerson was, and so I mean, I lived on the corner of Glendon Avenue in Massachusetts, and so I remember this view, and the Mormon temple was something I always saw, and I remember something about that, but
It was
I
so
didn't.
prominent. I didn't do it. I regretted not being able to. I had an opportunity, and I'm not Mormon. I just thought it was an opportunity, and I have been in Salt Lake at the Mormon Tabernacle and did a tour of that, and the acoustics are just amazing. How you can hear conversational tones in the back row without any amplification from the stage.
Did you
It's
keep
amazing.
on singing? Did you always sing?
No, I'm not a singer. I'm not an
Because the way
entertainer.
I remember you at uni, you and I were in a boys' glee class in B7
Okay,
or the B10.
okay, and that we had we had Mitchum in there.
I remember that. I remember that.
You guys are amazing.
He used to come in. He used to come in hungover, and that's an interesting. Yeah, you have a very good memory. It's funny how you
Yeah,
what
he was quite a fellow.
Yes, I was just Glee Club, but I never had any special talent. Let's put it that way. Does anybody still communicate with Randy Newman, since you're talking about music?
I never really knew him. I don't know if Bill does know him.
Well, there's a group of us that prior to the pandemic would get together about once every 6 months to include Randy. And but I haven't communicated with him for probably 2 or 3 years now. But he's still, at least at that time, he was still engaged in the industry and still active, and would make random performances. Whether he's doing that today or not, I don't know. But we kind of kidded that, given the cancel culture, the songs that he wrote while we were growing up, he couldn't even play today. So
that's absolutely. Yeah, he was his own. He had his own mind, and he performed. The story of a friend of mine tells me, living in Santa Monica Canyon, that they used to play football with Randy outside the house, and Randy's mother used to say, "Randy, come in and practice your piano," and he used to say, "I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it." He wanted to play football on the street, like most boys. I mean, you play your sports, and it's just a funny personal side. But say hello from Todd if you see Randy.
he's been very successful.
Sandy, did you go to Paul Revere or Emerson?
I went to Webster Junior High.
Where's that?
It's on Sawtelle and National in West Los Angeles. So if you lived north of National, you went to Uni. If you lived south of National, you went to Venice. So it's more in the West LA area. So I had to take the number 8 bus and transfer to get to Westwood Boulevard, take Westwood, then get on the Santa Monica bus to get to Uni. So I took the bus to school.
If you look at the geographic area that Uni drew on, from Webster to Bel Air to the Palisades, it was quite a cross section.
And I lived in Benedict Canyon, which is way on the other side. So that was an hour bus ride each way.
Yeah.
It was difficult. And I
Sandra, I wanted to say that, did people ever have confusions because there was you, Sandy Taylor, and there was Sarah Taylor? And that's how I came to know who you were because of that.
You know, I have to tell you, I'm just sitting here listening to you all talk. And it is giving me such great pleasure just to hear about your past. I didn't know you didn't know me. It's charming to hear you talk. I think, a happy kid when I went to Webster, and I think I was happy when I went to uni, but I wasn't, you know how they had the lower patio and the upper patio, and they had the, you know, popular kids.
And the Grove, they had the Grove.
And the Grove, right. I just remember right for me. That's how I look at it. I had friends, and
were you in a Y club, Sandy?
I ended up being in the Mamsells. You know, so I had that group of friends, and it was lovely. They were just such nice girls, because you have to remember, many of them came from a different area than I came from. So
These are the Mamsells. Wait.
well, I'm probably in there, a younger me.
Yeah. You know, what I should do is scan these and email them. Do you think that's the best way for people to see them?
I think that's a great idea.
I'd love to see them.
Oh, I know you would. That's a given.
Well, you know, for a while we could get all, they put all of the elementary school photos on the internet, and then we lost the ability to get them.
Really?
I mean, I
On the
remember
website?
looking at those things. I went through. It was a website, and something closed down about it. I don't know
Right.
how long it was, because
No,
I'm not
Dave
very
set up
computer
the
savvy.
Uni High website and it has pictures on it, right, Bill?
Yes, yeah, it's active.
Yeah, it's active.
Hmm.
And it's
I mean,
good
can
to-
you still find out who went to Fairburn? Will they have like a 6th grade Fairburn picture, or a Warner
like
Avenue
whoever posts
picture
it,
or something?
so it's random. So I'll figure out how to post these. We're so cute then. My goodness.
I'd love to see any of those things.
Yeah, I know. Kent's been trying to get in, but I don't think he's making it. Well, let's just kind of address the question for kicks of influences. Sandy, what would you say are the major, this is Ginny's question, the major influences on your shaping who you are?
I really think the way I grew up, that my mother and grandmother raised me. I lost my father when I just turned 7. I had a working mother who worked 6 days a week. They had a lot of influence. When I look back on my life, I remember my grandmother, and maybe I've told this story because it's so clear. My grandmother told me that I would be a teacher because I was good with children and I knew how to babysit. And at Webster Junior High, they came from uni to sign us up for class.
There's Kent. I'm sorry.
Hello.
Sorry.
Hello.
Can you hear me, you guys?
Yep.
Good.
And she told me, she said, now Sandra, when they come, tell them that you need to take teacher class. My grandmother went to maybe the 3rd grade. Now remember, you take teacher classes. So you know what that meant. That meant pre-college. I didn't know that. So I told her, people, I need to take teacher classes. And they told me, no, they were going to sign me up for shorthand because I could be a secretary.
Oh, God.
I mean, I was not very bright or not good enough to take teacher.
Wow.
And I remember saying, no, my grandma told me I have to take teacher classes and she's going to ask me. And I think that I just broke down and kept, like, you know how they say it over and over? I didn't even know that. I just cried. I said, well, my grandma said, I'm going to be a teacher, take teacher. And you know, they let me take teacher classes.
Good.
Whatever that meant. That meant algebra and geometry and English and not. God darn it, my grandma was right. I became a teacher.
I love it.
And when I
Yeah.
talk about influence,
Kent, why don't we say hi to you and tell us what you think are the main influences on your life?
Well, my family, my friends, I had influences when I was in Mexico. I had a lot of influences when I was in high school. And that was my grandmother lived right on the boardwalk in Venice Beach. There were a lot of immigrants who lived there. It was very cheap rents. And the beatniks started living there because rent was real cheap. So there were a lot of artists there, beatniks, people who had, you know, some of them had dropped out of corporate life and they were just doing their thing. And I was able to hang out with a lot of those people. They had a big influence on me. And then being in Mexico, there were people that had a strong influence on me as well. I've been lucky because I don't really search out people, but people seem to find me for some reason.
And what was the influence to be a bullfighter?
No, well, no. The influence to be a bullfighter was by watching bullfights on television. In 1963, there were some real good bullfighters, and it just kind of made sense to me. You know, it impacted me emotionally, and I thought, hey, this is something that's worth trying.
And you did it.
Yeah, well, funny thing is, you know, I told my mom I was at Santa Monica College, and it was like March when I started watching him, or I started watching him, I think in January or February. I told her in March, Mom, I'm going to finish this school year, then I'm going to work the summer, and then I'm going to Mexico. And she said, why are you going to Mexico? I said, I'm going because I'm going to become a bullfighter. And then, you know, school ended and I worked. And in September, I told my mom, you know, I'm giving 2 weeks notice at my job. And then I'm going to Mexico. And she said, well, why are you going to Mexico? I said, Mom, I told you, you know, I'm going to be a bullfighter. And she started crying. I said, hey, don't cry. And she says, well, I'm just crying because I think it's dangerous and stuff. But here's the kind of influence that she had on me. She said, if this is something you really want to do, you should go down now. And if you don't go down now, pretty soon you'll be 40, 50 years old and you'll be crying tears in your beer saying, gee, I should have gone down when I could have.
What was the influence of you of having a twin?
Just having a twin. When we were growing up, I was closer to my sister Susan, who was a year older, and then Karen and I got close as adults, and she had a big influence on me too. She was quite a character. She was very artistic, very independent, very ambitious, very talented, very kind. She was a great person. I miss her too.
When did she pass on?
Gee, like around, I think, 2012.
Hmm.
We lived together several times. You know, we shared I came back from Mexico in 1974. I couldn't do bullfighting anymore due to injuries, and but I was doing lapidary work, grinding and polishing gemstones and making jewelry. So I was still 2 years in Mexico, totally out of the bulls, didn't think about them, didn't regret anything except that I couldn't continue. But so for the first 2 years after, and I didn't retire, I just stopped. And I stopped right when things were going real good for me, finally. But anyway, that's a different story. But so my sister and I, so I would buy my gemstones in Mexico at the mines, but I would sell them in the United States. And the same, well, my jewelry I sold in Mexico, but soon I was just retailing and wholesaling gemstones, and I would sell up here and I would get my supplies in Mexico. So half the time I'd be up here in Los Angeles, half the time I'd be in Mexico. And then I realized that I didn't have to be in Mexico because I could just take my 3 or 4 trips to the mines a year and stay up here. And the reason that I came back here was I had a girlfriend who I met when I was in the bulls, and she wanted to get married, but she wanted me to quit the bulls, and I told her I'm not going to do that. And so I continued in the bulls. And then when I got out of the bulls and I was in Mexico, I wanted to get married with her, but she wouldn't have anything to do about that. And so I decided, hey, I kept after for 2 years there, and the answer was always no. And so I decided to move back to the United States. I spent a fortune on long distance calls for 2 years. I called her, figuring, well, she's just playing hard to get. Well, she was doing that, but she was for real. And it took me 2 years to realize, well, maybe she doesn't want to marry me. So I was living up here, and after 2 years and spending a fortune on long distance calls, I decided to stop calling her because maybe she really didn't want to marry me. How could that possibly be, right? From my point of view. So I stopped communicating with her, and 2 weeks later she calls me and says she's moving up here and we're going to get married. And that's what happened.
That's an interesting story. In the interest of time, Bill, why don't we go to you? Big influences.
I think that the biggest influence for me were my parents. They were just well-grounded, had a great value system, and they passed that along to me, and I've used that ever since. And other people have had influences over time. And 20 years ago, I accepted Christ, and that I think even gave me a more enlightened value system. So.
The interesting thing to me about Jesus is he was a radical. I mean, he violated Old Testament taboos. He did all kinds of things that upset the system. He said, care about the poor, turn the other cheek. So a lot of what people who say they're Christians think they don't practice. Do you find that, or what do you think about that?
I would say there are a lot of false Christians, yes. A lot of ministers really don't, you have to question their Christianity and the values that they hold.
If they're out for money and power.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so John, influences.
Gosh, I think this is really interesting subject. I've been really trying to figure out what I was going to say. And I guess that would be the same areas, like would, of course, my parents. And I've never stopped working on that one, trying to understand it. I've been working on one painting of my father for I don't know how many years. It's already been exhibited, and then it came back, and I mean, it's not just my father, it's a man sitting in an armchair, and I mean, I'm at a loss for words. You know, I mean, it's a huge one,
Well,
and
you,
I haven't figured it out.
Soren, come and say hi, okay? Come on.
Yeah.
My grandson, who's 12, is here, so I wanted him to say hi.
Oh, great.
Come and say hi so they can't see you, Soren, back there. You have to put your face by the computer. They can only see
Um,
your shirt. You gotta bend down.
Hello.
Hi there.
Oh, hi. Hello. Should I continue with this?
Yeah, you got profound pearls.
Well, I mean, I'm going on the personal kind of level. So we moved around a lot. It seemed we moved around a lot. And we left New Jersey when I was 7, then we were in LA, then we were in Chicago, then we're back to LA again. And I went to school in the Valley. And so when I came to Emerson, that was in the B7, they were all new people. I don't know if that has to do with why I remember everyone, but I took note of everyone. I had no, everybody was equal. I didn't know anyone except Ronald Parker, who I went to the school I went to. And so, and then half of them left after the B7. They went to the newly formed Revere School. And it was curious because I remembered a lot of them when I went to, when I came to uni in the B10, I still knew who all these people were. I didn't really put it together about the nature of my memory. I just thought everybody didn't remember me because they had higher, more philosophically profound thoughts to think about.
Yeah, themselves.
You're
Honestly,
special.
I did.
You're special.
You know I am. And but I knew who everybody was. I still remembered everything. But you know, and so I guess it's a lot of it that had, it seemed when I sort of found my own group involved with drama, and I was in school plays, and it seemed most of us at uni hung out down at the Grove area. That's what, you know, like people like Louis Palmer, Chris Cabot, Mark Serlin, and then Joel, of course, Joel Rosenberg, and then he went to Hollywood High School. And I think that group of people that I met there was very important. I hung on to a lot of friendships. And I think I mentioned about how, you know, it was around the time of 1960, I got there was the Dwan Gallery in Westwood. I used to go there, so I was interested in abstract expressionist painting. I'd always been interested in painting. And as Kent mentioned, now down in Venice, there was the whole beat scene. And I used to go down there. I was showing paintings at the Gas House and the Venice West Cafe in the 12th grade. You know, I mean, they were terrible paintings, you know. With the great thing of high school, like Moon Madness, you know, that kind of stuff, real sophomoric. And that was a big one. That was a very big jazz and movies. So all of those things were a huge influence on me. And from that period, that's why, you know, when Todd was saying, and I said also about, you know, losing friends from that time, that's been a really big thing, especially over the last 4 years. I've lost a lot of friends. And those were the people I kept talking to
Hmm.
on the phone, and or I'd see them because they're from different places. So
And
I
then-
think that covers that. I did meet a lot of great people at uni, you know, and we stayed friends.
That's amazing. In the interest of
Yeah.
time, let's go to Todd. Big influences.
Well, as I said, I was born in Chicago, and my father had a small construction company. I had an older brother, 4 years older, and an older sister, 8 years older. And we used to call standing water back then polio ponds. I didn't learn how to swim until I came to California. I was a radio guy, Arthur Godfrey. Television was just getting started. So when I came to uni, one of our field trips was to Sperry Rand. And I looked at programming and I said, well, that looks really interesting to me, programming. And ultimately became a COBOL programmer, section leader, systems analyst, up to vice president. So some of those field trips, you don't really know what an influence it ultimately will have on you. So that's one thing. But like he was having trouble, I was having trouble trying to think about how to answer that. I didn't have an overwhelming calling. I've always thought people that did have a calling were lucky, whether they be physicians or the law. They didn't have to struggle and find their way, as most people do. They're not quite sure. Look how many times you change your major in college. You know, things you thought you'd like, you end up souring on, and other things you get introduced, and then you say, I'm more interested in that now. So I've just thought people that were in medicine or came from a family of physicians, to have that kind of structure was right there for you. It was easy to get with the program.
Okay, interesting. Sandy, you've said be a teacher is a big one.
Yes. That's it. I was a teacher. I was a teacher for 32 years. They were happy, happy years of my life. I've also had a happy marriage, which probably that kind of coincides with life. We've been married, it'll be 58 years.
Wow.
We've raised 3 great kids. I've got 5 great grandchildren. And when I think about it, when my husband and I got married, we were both young. So he just turned 23 and I just turned 22. And I think we sort of kind of built a philosophy together of what we wanted our life. And maybe along the way, he influenced me and I influenced him. And I don't want to say we've become one.
Right.
After 58 years, you are pretty much, joined at the hip, and now we really are. But I have to say that when we go to bed at night, every night, we laugh before we go to bed. We make that a sort of kind of a rule, just have a little laughter. And
Well, did somebody tell a joke, or you can't just go.
if you really want to know what I do, is I get him tucked into bed and then I nuzzle my nose in his neck and he laughs and he tells me your hands are cold, and I laugh with him. Nothing very high level, just an act of love. That's
It
all.
works.
And we have a little chuckle, a little laugh about it. So I think my influence really, somebody says family. I think my growing up family influenced my family that I helped raise, and they're still influencing me in ways to sometimes be a better person. They help me out.
Okay, it's my turn. I think sociologically, being a firstborn, first grandchild, first parent's child, I never had any obstacles. It was assumed that I was going to achieve, and I did. But the nice thing too is there was no pressure to achieve. No one said you got to get straight A's or anything like that. So that was a good feeling to know that you were supported, but without pressure. And my father must have said about 1,000,000 times, I'm so proud of you. 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 So they definitely were supportive. And going to Berkeley, I think, was influential. My mother was really spiritual. We went to the Church of Religious Science, which is, positive. You make your life with your intention, that kind of thing. We didn't think we were sinners. We thought made in the image of God. So that kind of positive influence added to the positive for my family. And then, like Sandy, I've been a teacher all my life, and that's where I spent a lot of energy. And I think another influence was having a son and a grandson. And a brother. I really liked having an eye into the male experience. So that's been interesting. And I think that's it. So what I'll do is I will scan these photographs. Oh, you can kind of see them. Can you? These are the mamsells. And this is Julie Jameson. Do you see her?
Yeah.
How do I get on your picture? I still am looking at Sandra.
Yes, so am I.
Do
Me too.
gallery. Oh, you don't see these?
They're very small.
Only a small picture.
No, I don't see.
Sandy's
I have
still
an idea.
here.
I have an idea. I'm gonna make me the spotlight.
Well,
And I'm gonna get rid of Sandy.
good.
And,
Oh.
and then now can you see them?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
those are the mamsells.
but they look like little dots
Oh,
of the bottom one.
can you see that at all?
Yeah, but I
Bottom
can't.
one I can, but it's hard for me to make out who they are.
Well, it's Karen
I
Montner.
see you though. I
I'm
see
in the
you.
middle.
Yeah.
And let's see, go this way. Do you see Peggy?
Peggy, and then you, and then Julie, and I can't. But then I see. Oh, who is that?
That
What a-
Madeline was the class ahead of us. She was my neighbor.
Okay.
And that's Kathy Bamberger at the very bottom. You can't really see. Anyway,
Okay.
I'll figure out how to scan them and I'll email them for the next one. So anybody have any great ideas for a topic for the next Zoom in February?
You're gonna do it in February?
We do it every month. And I
Oh,
try
you
to
do?
rotate
Okay.
it so that different times work for different people.
Here's one. If you could do anything, starting now, totally different from anything you've done before, what would you like to do and why?
Okay. All right. And are there any times that are really bad for you that you don't want me to schedule?
Well, I know I can't do it on Thursday nights
I
once
know
the
that.
next semester starts. That's
And
just
Joel can't either.
the night I teach. Yeah.
I got that. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. These are so interesting. It's so much fun to see people. Sandy and I were born on the same day, huh?
We are
Oh.
Geminis.
Yep. And you got to find out what time.
I know it, and I don't know where to find, maybe on my birth certificate if I could find it.
For sure. That's the place. All right, my dears. Good to see you. Take care. Happy New Year. It's the year of
You
the
too,
water
Gail.
rabbit.
You gentlemen.
Bye.
Thank
See
you.
you, everybody.
Happiness to everyone.
Yeah,